He was the untouchable CEO of a billion-dollar empire. She was the shy, silent maid no one ever noticed. But when she raised her hand and signed good morning, everything changed. Not just for him, but for an entire company. This simple act of kindness sparked a transformation no one saw coming. You won't believe how one quiet gesture spoke louder than 1,000 words. The lobby buzzed with the usual Monday morning rush, polished shoes clicking against marble floors, voices murmuring in quick greetings, the revolving door spinning endlessly. Towering above it all was the grand glass entrance of Rhodes Enterprises, one of New York City's most powerful corporations. Among the flurry of tailored suits and leather briefcases, no one paid attention to the young woman arranging the fresh flowers beside the elevator. Maya moved with practiced care, her hands gentle as she fluffed the lilies and tucked in a stray petal. She wore a plain gray uniform, slightly too big for her small frame, and her dark hair was tied neatly back. Her eyes, though soft and warm, were always lowered, and her presence was so quiet, it seemed like she wasn't even there. She had worked in the building for over a year, yet very few people knew her name. Fewer still knew she had never spoken a word in her life. At precisely 8 a.m., the lobby quieted for a brief moment. Mr. Ethan Rhodes entered. The CEO was a tall, sharp-featured man in a charcoal suit, always flanked by his assistant and 2 security officers. He walked quickly, efficiently, the kind of man who didn't waste time on small talk. People straightened when he passed, offering tight professional nods, which he rarely returned. Maya glanced up from the flowers, her heart beating a little faster. She had seen him every morning for months, powerful, distant, unreachable. But today, something stirred in her. Maybe it was the way the sunlight hit the glass, or maybe it was the fact that no one had ever noticed her smile. Without thinking too hard, she lifted one hand. With a small, hesitant motion, she signed, "Good morning." It was barely a gesture, but it carried warmth, sincerity, and a kind of bravery she hadn't known she had. Ethan Rhodes paused mid-stride for a second. His expression didn't change. Then his eyes caught hers. He looked confused, maybe even startled, as if no one had ever greeted him that way, not without words, not without fear or agenda. He nodded, slowly, then walked on. But for the first time in years, something in him lingered behind. That evening, long after most employees had gone home and the city lights blinked like scattered stars outside his office window, Ethan sat at his desk, but his mind wasn't on the merger documents in front of him. Instead, it drifted back to the girl by the elevator, the maid, her shy smile, that small sign with her hand. "Good morning." He couldn't shake it. "Who's the maid near the elevator?" he asked, his assistant as she gathered her coat to leave. "Maya, I think. She's been here for a while. Quiet girl, never speaks," she replied. "I think she's mute." Ethan nodded slowly. "Find out more." Discreetly. Later, he sat alone in the security room, scanning through the day's footage. Not for security breaches, but for Maya. He watched her work silently, methodically, never resting. She dusted corners no one looked at, straightened crooked magazines, helped a colleague pick up spilled coffee without being asked. There was a calm in her, movements a quiet pride. He fast-forwarded to the evening. There she was, folding her apron, placing it neatly in a bag. Instead of heading straight home, she took a bus to a small building on the city's west side. He paused the footage. It was a community center. Curious, Ethan searched the name online. It was a non-profit for children with speech and hearing disabilities. She volunteered there almost every night. He leaned back in his chair, stunned. A maid, volunteering, after a full shift, using her little salary to help kids who lived in silence, just like her. She brought them books, helped them with homework, taught them to sign, not for praise or attention, but simply because she cared. Ethan sat in silence for a long time, surrounded by blinking screens and the low hum of security monitors. He, a man worth millions, who hadn't spoken to a stranger without a business agenda in years, felt something stir in his chest. A simple "good morning," signed by hands that worked tirelessly, had shaken something loose inside him, and it was just the beginning. The next morning, the usual rhythm of the office resumed: briefcases, coffee cups, brisk nods, and elevator dings. But something was different. Ethan Rhodes, the CEO known for his icy demeanor and laser-sharp focus, stood just inside the lobby, waiting. Not for a meeting, not for a car. He was waiting for her. Maya walked in through the side staff entrance, her hair slightly damp from the morning drizzle. She clutched her tote bag and moved quickly toward the elevators, her eyes downcast as always, prepared to start another quiet day unnoticed. But when she looked up, her steps froze. Ethan was there. He offered the smallest of smiles, not forced, not polished for business, but real. Then, slowly and a bit clumsily, he raised his hand and signed, "Good morning." Maya blinked, stunned. For a moment she wondered if she'd imagined it. Her heart thudded against her ribs, her hands trembling slightly. But she smiled deeply and shyly, and returned the sign with a small nod of gratitude. From the receptionist's desk to the nearby security guards, everyone turned to stare. The CEO, who barely spoke a word to most of his executives, was signing to a maid. The whispers started before the elevator even closed. Over the next few days, something extraordinary began to unfold. Each morning, Ethan would pause to sign up, greeting. Maya, in turn, would reply, sometimes adding a little wave or a thankful gesture. Ethan found himself learning more signs in the evenings. He asked his assistant to bring in a local interpreter once a week to teach him the basics. Was awkward at first. His fingers moved stiffly, unsure, but Maya was patient. She laughed silently when he got it wrong, and he grinned sheepishly in return. These small, wordless moments began to ripple through the company like sunlight warming a cold room. Employees began to notice not just the kindness in Ethan's eyes, but a softness they'd never seen. It was as if someone had opened a door inside him that had long been sealed shut. And Maya, the girl no one ever noticed, was now the reason people smiled in the morning. She had said nothing, and yet she had spoken louder than anyone else ever had. The rain came suddenly that Thursday afternoon. Thick, cold drops hammering the city streets, turning sidewalks into rivers and umbrellas into useless shields. Traffic snarled, and by evening, most employees at Rhodes Enterprises had rushed home to avoid the flood, but Ethan stayed. A meeting had run long, and as he finally exited the building, something made him pause. Just past the revolving doors, near the edge of the soaked pavement, he spotted a familiar figure, small, drenched, struggling to hold an umbrella over someone else. It was Maya. She wasn't trying to save herself from the storm. Instead, she was shielding an elderly man in a wheelchair, trying to help him across the flooded crosswalk. The wheels kept catching in the waterlogged cracks, and the man looked cold and panicked. Ethan didn't think. He dashed forward into the rain, his Italian shoes soaking instantly. Without a word, he grabbed hold of the chair and helped Maya. Pushed together, they guided the man to the safety of the nearby shelter awning. The man thanked them breathlessly, clutching their hands. Maya smiled warmly and signed, "Take care." Ethan stood there beside her, water dripping from his hair, his suit clanging uncomfortably. She looked up at him, blinking away rain. "Why were you still out here?" he asked, forgetting for a moment that she couldn't answer with words. But she did answer with her hands, slowly signing. He was alone. He needed help. That's all. Ethan stared at her, the world quiet around them despite the storm. "Let me drive you home," he said softly. He hesitated, but then nodded inside. His black town car, the heat hummed gently as Maya sat beside him, wringing rain from her sleeves. She looked out the window, her eyes peaceful. As the car rolled through the rain-slick streets, she signed again, almost casually. Sometimes, even one small act of kindness can change someone's whole day. Ethan didn't reply at first, but in his chest, something cracked open because she wasn't just talking about the man they helped. She was talking about him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt it. He felt human. The following month, Rhodes Enterprises felt like a different place. Where once there had been silence and cold formality, now there was warmth in the air, smiles in elevators, friendly nods in hallways, quiet conversations over morning coffee. Ethan, the once distant CEO, had become approachable, human, and the heart of this quiet revolution was Maya. It began with a company-wide memo, a new inclusion initiative. Ethan announced that Rhodes Enterprises would begin actively hiring individuals with disabilities, starting with partnerships with local organizations and centers. Sign language training would be offered to all employees. New volunteer programs would launch, including one supporting the very center where Maya worked with children each night. And then came the company event. It was a celebration of kindness, growth, and change, not the typical corporate gala. The lights were soft, the stage simple. Employees filled the auditorium, murmuring with curiosity. At the front row sat Maya, dressed in a modest floral dress, her hair gently curled. She sat nervously, unaware of what was about to happen. Ethan stepped on stage. Applause filled the room. He looked out over the crowd, then down at Maya. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but full of emotion. "Sometimes," he began, "the most powerful voices in the world don't speak out loud. They speak through actions. and through hearts, but never ask for credit. He paused, then looked directly at her. I want to thank someone who reminded me how to listen and how to truly see the people around me. Maya, would you join me? The spotlight shifted. Gasps echoed. Maya's eyes widened. Hesitantly, she stood and walked up. Ethan turned to face her. Slowly, carefully, he signed, "Thank you for showing me how to listen without words." The room went silent. Then thunderous applause broke out. People rose to their feet, some clapped with tears in their eyes. Maya, overwhelmed, covered her mouth with trembling hands. For so long, she had lived in the background, unnoticed, unheard. And now, in front of hundreds, she was seen, and celebrated. Later, as she walked off the stage, children from her center ran up to hug her. One of them signed, "You're my hero." Maya smiled. She had never needed a voice to change the world, just kindness, and the courage to use it.